In a quiet little town surrounded by green hills and vast fields, there lived a young woman named Sarah. She was kind-hearted, hard-working, and had always dreamed of becoming a mother. For years, she imagined what it would feel like to hold her own child in her arms, to watch them grow, and to share life's joys and challenges together. That dream finally came true on a chilly but beautiful autumn morning when Ethan entered the world. The hospital room was filled with soft sunlight streaming through the windows as Sarah held her newborn son for the first time. His tiny fingers curled around hers, and his big, curious eyes seemed to take in everything around him. It felt like magic. The nurse handed him over carefully, wrapping him snugly in a warm blanket. Sarah couldn't stop smiling. She whispered his name softly, Ethan, and promised to protect him no matter what. Ethan's arrival brought so much happiness not just to Sarah but also to their entire family. Her parents visited often, bringing homemade meals and gifts for the baby. Neighbors stopped by to congratulate her, and friends called daily to check how things were going. Every moment with Ethan felt special. Whether it was feeding him late at night or watching him sleep peacefully in his crib, Sarah cherished every second. Life felt perfect in those early days. As weeks went by, however, Sarah started noticing something unusual. While other babies in the neighborhood were beginning to smile back at people or trying to lift their heads during tummy time, Ethan seemed different. He didn't react the same way to sounds or movements. At first, Sarah thought maybe he was just a little slower than others, that he'd catch up soon enough. But deep down, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Sarah decided to talk to her pediatrician about her concerns. After several tests and consultations, the doctors broke some difficult news to her. Ethan had been born with a rare genetic disorder. This condition meant that he might face developmental delays, physical challenges, and even health complications as he grew older. Hearing this was devastating for Sarah. All the dreams she once had for her son now felt uncertain. Would he ever go to school? Could he play outside with other kids? Would he be able to live independently someday? Despite the overwhelming emotions, Sarah refused to give up hope. She knew that Ethan needed her more than ever, and she vowed to do whatever it took to make his life as joyful and fulfilling as possible. She began researching his condition tirelessly, reading books, joining online support groups, and attending seminars hosted by medical experts. Every bit of information gave her strength and clarity. Slowly but surely, Sarah transformed from a worried new mom into a fierce advocate for her son. Life with Ethan wasn't easy, but it was far from dull. Even though he faced unique challenges, he had a way of lighting up the room with his presence. One of the earliest signs of his personality came when he was just 3 months old. Whenever Sarah sang lullabies to him, Ethan would wiggle his arms and legs excitedly, almost as if he were dancing along. This became their special bonding ritual. No matter how tired or stressed Sarah felt, those moments with Ethan reminded her why she kept fighting so hard. When Ethan turned 6 months old, Sarah noticed another endearing trait. He loved looking at bright colors. She bought colorful toys and hung mobiles above his crib, watching in awe as his eyes followed the swirling patterns. These small victories made all the difference. They reminded Sarah that while Ethan's journey might look different from other children's, it was still full of wonder and discovery. By the time Ethan reached his first birthday, Sarah had grown accustomed to navigating the ups and downs of caring for a child with special needs. There were days when frustration threatened to overwhelm her, especially when treatments didn't go as planned or when insurance denied coverage for essential therapies. On those tough days, she leaned on her support system, her parents, close friends, and fellow moms who understood what she was going through. Together, they formed a network of love and encouragement that helped Sarah stay strong. One particular memory stood out during Ethan's early years. It happened on a sunny afternoon when Sarah decided to take him to the park for the first time. She bundled him up in a stroller and wheeled him along the winding paths lined with trees. As they passed a group of children playing nearby, one little girl ran up to them, curious about the baby in the stroller. "What's wrong with him?" the girl asked innocently, pointing at Ethan. Before Sarah could respond, Ethan let out a gurgle and smiled widely, causing the girl to giggle. "He's happy," she exclaimed before running back to her friends. That simple interaction stayed with Sarah for a long time. It taught her an important lesson, that despite the challenges Ethan faced, he had a gift for spreading joy. People gravitated toward his warmth and innocence, even if they didn't fully understand his situation. And Sarah realized that perhaps Ethan's purpose wasn't to fit into society's expectations, but to remind everyone around him of the beauty and simplicity and kindness. Though Ethan's future remained uncertain, Sarah chose to focus on making each day count. She documented his milestones, no matter how small, in a journal she kept by her bedside. From the first time he rolled over to the day he managed to sit upright without support, every achievement was celebrated. These moments weren't just milestones. They were reminders of Ethan's resilience and determination. As the seasons changed and Ethan continued to grow, Sarah found herself learning alongside him. Parenthood, she realized, wasn't about having all the answers. It was about embracing the unknown and finding joy in the unexpected. With Ethan by her side, Sarah discovered a strength she never knew she possessed. Their bond was unbreakable, forged through love, patience, and countless unforgettable memories. And so, even though Ethan's life began with uncertainty, it was already shaping up to be extraordinary. Every laugh, every challenge, and every triumph added layers to their story, a story that would continue to unfold in ways neither of them could predict. Ethan's second birthday marked a turning point in Sarah's life, though not in the way she had hoped. By this time, Ethan still hadn't started walking or talking like other children his age. His movements were slower, and he often seemed unresponsive to sounds or voices around him. While some might have dismissed these signs as part of his unique personality, Sarah couldn't ignore the growing list of concerns. She decided it was time to seek answers. The journey to understanding. Ethan's condition began with a visit to a specialist, a pediatric neurologist who had experience dealing with rare disorders. The appointment was overwhelming. The doctor asked countless questions about Ethan's development, conducted physical exams, and ordered a series of tests. Blood work, brain scans, and genetic screenings became routine parts of their lives. For weeks, Sarah waited anxiously for the results, her mind racing with possibilities. Was it something she did during pregnancy? Could it have been prevented? These thoughts haunted her, but she pushed them aside, focusing instead on finding clarity. When the diagnosis finally came, it wasn't what Sarah had hoped for. Ethan had a rare genetic disorder that affected his nervous system, causing delays in motor skills, speech, and cognitive abilities. The doctor explained that the condition was progressive, meaning it would likely worsen over time. Hearing those words felt like a punch to the gut. Sarah sat there, clutching Ethan tightly in her arms, trying to process the enormity of what she'd just been told. Her sweet boy, who brought so much light into her life, now faced a lifetime of challenges that no parent should ever have to imagine. But Sarah didn't have the luxury of falling apart. Ethan needed her more than ever, and she knew she had to be strong. For him, for herself, and for their family. That night, after putting Ethan to bed, Sarah sat alone in the dimly lit living room, staring at the stack of medical pamphlets the doctor had given her. They were filled with complicated terms and statistics that painted a bleak picture of Ethan's future. Tears streamed down her face as she read through them, but then something inside her shifted. She realized that while she couldn't change Ethan's diagnosis, she could control how they moved forward. Sarah threw herself into research, determined to learn everything she could about Ethan's condition. She spent hours online, reading articles, joining support groups, and connecting with families who were navigating similar journeys. Through these interactions, she discovered a wealth of information that the doctors hadn't mentioned. Alternative therapies, dietary changes, and even experimental treatments that showed promise. Every tidbit of knowledge gave her hope and renewed determination. One of the most valuable resources Sarah found was a local advocacy group for children with disabilities. The organization offered workshops, counseling sessions, and even financial assistance for families struggling with medical expenses. At one of their meetings, Sarah met a woman named Lisa, whose son had a similar diagnosis. Lisa became an instant source of guidance and encouragement, sharing tips on everything from managing hospital visits to finding therapists who specialized in Ethan's condition. Having someone who truly understood what she was going through made all the difference. As Sarah dove deeper into learning about Ethan's needs, she also began advocating fiercely for him within the healthcare system, navigating insurance claims, securing appointments with specialists, and ensuring Ethan received the best possible care required relentless effort. There were moments when frustration threatened to overwhelm her, like when a medication prescribed by one doctor clashed with another treatment plan, or when a therapy session had to be postponed due to scheduling conflicts. But Sarah refused to let bureaucracy stand in the way of her son's well-being. Her persistence paid off in unexpected ways. One day, during a follow-up appointment, Sarah met Dr. Patel, a compassionate physician who took a genuine interest in Ethan's case. Unlike some of the other doctors they'd encountered, Dr. Patel listened intently to Sarah's concerns and worked collaboratively with her to create a comprehensive care plan tailored specifically to Ethan's needs. Under his guidance, Ethan began receiving occupational therapy, speech therapy, and physical therapy, all aimed at helping him reach milestones at his own pace. Despite the progress, the road ahead remained fraught with challenges. Ethan's condition meant frequent hospital visits, sometimes lasting days or even weeks. Each trip was exhausting, both physically and emotionally. Sarah juggled work, childcare responsibilities, and endless medical bills, often feeling stretched, thin. Yet, amidst the chaos, there were glimmers of hope. During one particularly grueling therapy session, Ethan surprised everyone by taking his first shaky steps. It wasn't graceful, his legs wobbled, and he needed Sarah's hands to steady him, but it was a victory nonetheless. The room erupted in cheers, and Sarah hugged Ethan tightly, tears streaming down her face. These small triumphs kept Sarah going, reminding her why she fought so hard. They also taught her to celebrate every achievement, no matter how minor it might seem to others. When Ethan learned to hold a spoon or make eye contact for extended periods, Sarah marked those moments as milestones worth commemorating. She started keeping a journal where she documented each step of Ethan's journey, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. Writing helped her process her emotions and served as a reminder of how far they'd come. Beyond the medical battles, Sarah faced another challenge, explaining Ethan's condition to those around her. Friends and acquaintances often struggled to understand why Ethan behaved differently from other children. Some offered unsolicited advice, suggesting remedies or questioning whether Sarah was doing enough. Others simply avoided the topic altogether, unsure of what to say. While these reactions stung, Sarah chose to focus on the people who genuinely cared. Her parents, siblings, and closest friends rallied around her, offering help whenever they could. Their unwavering support reminded Sarah that she wasn't alone in this fight. Through it all, Sarah never lost sight of the joy Ethan brought into her life. Even on the hardest days, his laughter was enough to lift her spirits. He had a knack for finding delight in the simplest things: a brightly colored toy, the sound of rain tapping against the window, or the feel of grass beneath his fingers. Watching him explore the world in his own unique way inspired Sarah to see beauty in places she might otherwise overlook. By the time Ethan turned 3, Sarah had grown into a role she never anticipated, that of a warrior mom. She had become an expert on her son's condition, capable of explaining complex medical jargon to anyone who asked. She navigated the labyrinthine healthcare system with confidence, knowing exactly which questions to ask and which resources to tap into. Most importantly, she had cultivated a mindset of resilience, refusing to let fear dictate their lives. Looking back, Sarah realized that searching for answers wasn't just about understanding Ethan's diagnosis. It was about discovering her own strength. Every obstacle they faced together only deepened their bond. Though the future remained uncertain, Sarah approached it with courage and determination. She knew that whatever lay ahead, she and Ethan would face it side by side, armed with love, hope, and an unshakable belief in the power of perseverance. Ethan's 4th birthday arrived, and though his life was filled with challenges, It was also brimming with moments of pure joy, moments that reminded Sarah why she cherished every second they shared. These glimpses of happiness weren't grand or elaborate. They were simple, everyday experiences that carried a profound sense of meaning. For Sarah, these small victories became the foundation of their lives together, anchoring her during the toughest times. One of Ethan's favorite activities was listening to music. From the time he was a baby, certain melodies seemed to captivate him in ways nothing else could. Whether it was the gentle strumming of a guitar or the rhythmic beat of a drum, music had a magical effect on Ethan. He would tilt his head back, close his eyes, and smile as if the sounds transported him to another world. This love for music became a central part of their daily routine. Sarah often played soft tunes in the background while they ate breakfast or read books together. On sunny afternoons, she'd crank up the volume and dance around the living room with Ethan in her arms. His giggles echoed through the house, filling it with warmth and light. Those carefree moments were precious, offering a temporary escape from the weight of their reality. As Ethan grew older, his fascination with music evolved into something more tangible. One day, while visiting a local community center, Sarah noticed a flyer advertising an adaptive music program designed for children with special needs. Intrigued, she signed Ethan up without hesitation. The class turned out to be transformative, not just for Ethan but for Sarah as well. Under the guidance of a patient instructor, Ethan learned to play simple rhythms on a xylophone and shake maracas in time with the music. Watching him focus so intently, his face glowing with pride, brought tears to Sarah's eyes. It was one of the first times she saw Ethan express himself so freely, using sound as his language. Music became more than just entertainment. It was a bridge connecting Ethan to the world around him. But perhaps the most surprising discovery came when Ethan turned 5. During a family art project, Sarah handed him a set of crayons and a blank sheet of paper, not expecting much. To her astonishment, Ethan grabbed a bright red crayon and began scribbling furiously across the page. At first, the lines were chaotic and unstructured, but soon they started taking shape. Over the next few weeks, Ethan's artwork transformed from random doodles into vibrant abstract creations. Bold colors clashed and blended, forming patterns that seemed to tell stories only he understood. Sarah marveled at how expressive his drawings were, each piece reflecting a different mood or emotion. Art quickly became Ethan's primary mode of communication, allowing him to convey feelings words couldn't capture. Word of Ethan's artistic talent spread throughout their tight-knit community. Neighbors who once struggled to connect with Ethan now found themselves drawn to his colorful masterpieces. One afternoon, a local cafe owner approached Sarah and asked if she'd consider displaying some of Ethan's artwork in her shop. Flattered and excited, Sarah agreed. She carefully selected a few pieces, framing them with pride before hanging them on the cafe's walls. When Ethan visited the cafe for the first time and saw his work displayed, his reaction was priceless. He pointed at the paintings, clapping his hands and laughing with delight. Customers stopped to admire the artwork, leaving notes of encouragement and admiration. For the first time, Ethan felt seen, not as a child with limitations, but as a creative soul with boundless potential. These moments of connection extended beyond art and music. As Ethan continued to grow, Sarah made it a point to involve him in community activities whenever possible. They attended holiday parades, joined neighborhood picnics, and participated in charity events hosted by local organizations. Though Ethan couldn't always join in physically, his presence alone had a way of drawing people in. Children were especially drawn to him, fascinated by his unique perspective and infectious laugh. One little girl, Emma, became particularly fond of Ethan. Every weekend, she'd knock on their door, eager to spend time playing games or simply sitting quietly beside him. Their friendship blossomed naturally, proving that kindness transcended barriers of age, ability, or understanding. Sarah also discovered that Ethan had a knack for teaching others important life lessons. Once, during a school fundraiser, Ethan accompanied Sarah to help sell handmade crafts. A group of teenagers walked by, snickering at his unusual behavior and loud laughter. Instead of reacting defensively, Sarah knelt down beside Ethan and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Ethan loves meeting new friends. Do you want to say hello?" The teens hesitated, unsure of what to do. But when Ethan grinned widely and waved at them, their expressions softened. One boy stepped forward, shook Ethan's hand, and thanked him for being brave enough to share his creativity with the world. That encounter stayed with Sarah long after the event ended. It reinforced her belief that Ethan's presence inspired empathy and compassion in those around him. Even amidst the chaos of doctor appointments and therapy sessions, Sarah found ways to create joy-filled traditions for Ethan. Every Friday evening became adventure night, where they explored new places within their town, a park they hadn't visited yet, a bakery known for its delicious cookies, or even a quiet corner of the library where Ethan could flip through picture books. These outings gave structure to their week and provided opportunities for Ethan to experience the world in bite-sized adventures. Sometimes the trips were challenging. Ethan might grow overwhelmed by crowds or unfamiliar noises, but Sarah always found a way to adapt. If a location proved too stimulating, they'd retreat to the car, listen to calming music, and try again another day. Flexibility became key to ensuring Ethan felt safe and happy. Holidays held special significance in their household. Sarah went all out decorating for Christmas, stringing lights along the windows and placing festive ornaments everywhere. Ethan adored the twinkling lights, mesmerized by their glow. On Halloween, they crafted homemade costumes, transforming Ethan into a superhero or a pirate depending on his mood that year. Trick-or-treating was modified to suit his needs. They stuck to familiar streets and visited neighbors who knew Ethan well. Each celebration was tailored to accommodate his comfort level, yet still packed with excitement and wonder. Through these joyful experiences, Sarah realized that Ethan's condition didn't define him. It merely shaped the lens through which he viewed the world. His perspective was rich, imaginative, and deeply empathetic. People often remarked how spending time with Ethan reminded them to slow down and appreciate life's simplest pleasures. For Sarah, this realization was both humbling and empowering. It shifted her focus from mourning what Ethan couldn't do to celebrating what he could. And there was so much to celebrate. By the time Ethan reached 6 years old, his personality had fully blossomed. He was curious, affectionate, and endlessly resilient. While other children his age were learning to ride bikes or tie their shoes, Ethan was mastering skills uniquely suited to his abilities. He communicated through gestures, facial expressions, and bursts of laughter. He expressed love by reaching out for hugs or resting his head on Sarah's shoulder. And he found joy in the smallest details, a ray of sunlight streaming through the curtains, the texture of sand between his fingers, or the taste of chocolate chip cookies fresh from the oven. These moments weren't just fleeting distractions. They were anchors that grounded Sarah during the stormiest days. When treatments failed or setbacks occurred, she clung to memories of Ethan's laughter, his artwork, and the way he lit up the room with his presence. They reminded her that despite the hardships, their lives were filled with beauty and purpose. Ethan may have faced extraordinary challenges, but he also possessed an extraordinary ability to find happiness in the ordinary. And so, as the seasons changed and Ethan continued to grow, Sarah embraced each chapter of their journey with gratitude. She knew that life wouldn't always be easy, but she also knew that it would always be worth it. Together they created a tapestry of joy woven from music, art, friendship, and countless unforgettable moments. Ethan's spirit was a beacon of hope, not just for Sarah but for everyone fortunate enough to cross his path. As Ethan entered his preteen years, the challenges posed by his condition grew more pronounced. The rare genetic disorder that had been a part of his life since birth began to take its toll in ways Sarah hadn't fully anticipated. Hospital visits became longer and more frequent. Surgeries turned into routine procedures rather than isolated events, and therapies stretched on endlessly. Each day felt like walking a tightrope, balancing hope with the harsh realities of Ethan's declining health. One of the most difficult aspects was witnessing how much physical pain Ethan endured. His body often betrayed him, muscles seizing up unexpectedly or joints locking painfully in place. Simple tasks like sitting upright or holding a spoon required immense effort, leaving him exhausted. Sarah did everything she could to alleviate his discomfort, adjusting his medications, consulting specialists, and even learning basic massage techniques. But there were days when nothing seemed to help. Watching her son struggle broke her heart over and over again, yet she refused to let despair consume her. Instead, she channeled her energy into finding new solutions, no matter how small they might be. The emotional weight of Ethan's illness wasn't just limited to physical symptoms. It extended into every corner of their lives. School, for instance, became an ongoing challenge. Despite Sarah's best efforts to enroll Ethan in programs tailored to children with special needs, he struggled to adapt. Bright lights, loud noises, and crowded hallways overwhelmed him, triggering meltdowns that left both mother and son drained. Eventually, Sarah made the difficult decision to homeschool Ethan, creating a curriculum designed around his strengths and interests. While this gave them greater flexibility, it also meant sacrificing social opportunities, a compromise Sarah accepted reluctantly but willingly, knowing it was what Ethan needed most. Among all the trials they faced, one incident stood out as particularly harrowing, a night Sarah would never forget. It happened during a brutal winter storm when Ethan was 10 years old. The power went out at their home, plunging the house into darkness. Sarah lit candles and bundled Ethan under layers of blankets to keep him warm, but as the hours dragged on, something felt off. Ethan's breathing sounded labored, each inhale shallow and uneven. Panic gripped her as she realized he might be experiencing a respiratory crisis, a common complication of his condition. Without hesitation, Sarah called 911. The operator instructed her to perform chest compressions until paramedics arrived, but the thought of hurting her fragile son terrified her. Still, she forced herself to act, counting aloud as she pressed gently on his tiny chest. Tears streamed down her face as she begged him to hold on. When the ambulance finally pulled into their driveway, the paramedics rushed inside, taking over CPR efforts and stabilizing Ethan before rushing him to the hospital. That ride to the emergency room remains etched in Sarah's memory, a blur of flashing lights, sirens wailing against the icy silence of the storm, and Ethan lying motionless on a stretcher. She clung to his hand, whispering prayers and promises she hoped he could hear. "You're strong, my love," she told him through choked sobs. "We've got so much more to do together, don't leave me." At the hospital, doctors worked tirelessly to save Ethan's life. Hours passed in a haze of waiting rooms, sterile hallways, and updates delivered in clipped tones. Finally, the news came. Ethan had stabilized, though weak, he was alive. Relief washed over Sarah like a tidal wave, followed quickly by gratitude for the medical team, for modern medicine, and above all, for the fact that she still had her son. That night changed something fundamental within her. It reinforced the fragility of life and deepened her resolve to make every moment count. Despite such close calls, Sarah found strength in celebrating the victories, however fleeting. One milestone came when Ethan turned 12 and managed to complete a short walk with the aid of a walker. For weeks leading up to this achievement, physical therapists had worked diligently with him, coaxing his uncooperative muscles to cooperate. On the day he took those first shaky steps, Sarah cheered louder than anyone else in the room. Her voice cracked with emotion as she recorded the moment on her phone, tears streaming down her cheeks. Later, she replayed the video countless times, marveling at how far Ethan had come despite the odds stacked against him. These triumphs, though hard-won, reminded Sarah why she kept fighting. They also taught her to cherish the quiet moments, the ones that didn't involve applause or fanfare but carried equal significance. Like the afternoons spent reading stories aloud while Ethan rested his head on her lap, or the evenings when they sat side by side painting pictures together. Even the mundane routines, brushing his teeth, helping him dress, feeding him bite-sized pieces of food, became acts of love, infused with purpose and meaning. Through it all, Sarah leaned heavily on her support system. Friends brought meals when she was too tired to cook. Family members offered to babysit so she could steal a few hours of rest. And strangers, moved by Ethan's story, sent messages of encouragement, or donated funds to cover mounting medical bills. These gestures, big and small, reminded Sarah that she wasn't alone in this battle. They gave her the strength to keep going, even on days when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. But perhaps the greatest source of inspiration came from Ethan himself. Despite the hardships he faced, his spirit remained unbroken. He laughed freely, loved fiercely, and approached life with a curiosity that awed everyone around him. There were mornings when he'd wake up smiling, eager to start the day despite the discomfort he must have felt. Other times, he'd reach out to touch Sarah's face, his eyes filled with an understanding that transcended words. In those moments, Sarah realized that Ethan wasn't just surviving, he was thriving in his own unique way. This realization shifted something inside her. She stopped measuring success by traditional milestones and began focusing instead on the quality of their time together. What mattered most wasn't how many steps Ethan could take or how many words he could say. It was the joy they shared, the bond they nurtured, and the memories they created. Whether it was watching a sunset from their porch, listening to music, late into the night, or simply holding hands as they walked through the park, these experiences shaped the fabric of their lives. As Ethan grew older, Sarah grew wiser. She learned to embrace uncertainty, trusting that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Trials and tribulations tested her faith repeatedly, but they also revealed her inner resilience. Every setback became an opportunity to grow stronger, every victory a reminder of the beauty hidden within adversity. Through it all, Ethan remained her guiding star, illuminating the path forward with his unwavering courage and boundless love. By the time Ethan reached his teenage years, Sarah understood that life wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about finding meaning in the midst of it. Their journey had been anything but easy, yet it was rich with lessons, laughter, and love. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, Sarah approached it with renewed determination. She vowed to continue advocating for Ethan, cherishing every moment they shared and ensuring that his legacy lived on, not just in her heart, but in the hearts of everyone fortunate enough to know him. Ethan's story had always been one of quiet resilience, but as he entered his teenage years, it began to resonate far beyond the walls of their home. Word of his courage and creativity spread throughout the small town where they lived, touching the lives of neighbors, friends, and even strangers. What started as whispers of admiration among those who knew them soon grew into a groundswell of support that transformed Sarah and Ethan's world in ways neither of them could have imagined. It all began with Margaret, a retired schoolteacher who lived 2 doors down. Margaret had watched Ethan grow up from afar, marveling at how Sarah navigated the challenges of raising a child with such unique needs. One crisp autumn afternoon, she approached Sarah while they were both picking pumpkins at a local farm. "I've been thinking," Margaret said gently. "Ethan is so bright and curious. I'd love to help him learn in a way that works for him." Her offer was simple yet profound. She wanted to tutor Ethan at home, tailoring lessons to his abilities and interests. Sarah hesitated at first, unsure if adding another person to their routine would overwhelm Ethan. But after discussing it with him and seeing his eyes light up at the idea of learning new things, they agreed to give it a try. Margaret proved to be a blessing. She brought books filled with colorful illustrations, puzzles designed to engage Ethan's problem-solving skills, and hands-on activities like gardening or baking that allowed him to explore concepts through touch and movement. Slowly but surely, Ethan began to thrive under her guidance. For the first time, he showed an interest in letters and numbers, tracing shapes with his finger or pointing excitedly at pictures in a book. Margaret celebrated each milestone with genuine enthusiasm, reminding Sarah that progress didn't have to follow a traditional timeline to be meaningful. Word of Margaret's efforts reached other members of the community, sparking a ripple effect of kindness. A local artist named Clara, known for her vibrant murals around town, heard about Ethan's love for painting and decided to host an art workshop specifically for children with disabilities. When Sarah took Ethan to the event, he immediately gravitated toward the easels, dipping his brush into bold hues of blue, yellow, and green. The other participants cheered him on as he worked, clapping when he held up his finished piece, a swirling, abstract landscape bursting with color. Clara later invited Ethan to display his artwork alongside hers at an upcoming gallery show, giving him a platform to share his talent with the wider community. These acts of inclusion didn't stop there. As more people learned about Ethan's journey, they found creative ways to involve him in everyday life. The owner of a nearby bakery started hosting art and bakes days, where kids could decorate cookies or cupcakes using edible paints. Ethan became a regular attendee, delighting customers with his imaginative designs. Once he painted a cookie to look like a sunflower, its petals radiating outward in cheerful strokes. The baker framed a photo of the creation and hung it proudly behind the counter, calling it Ethan's masterpiece. Such gestures may have seemed small, but to Sarah, they meant everything. They showed her that Ethan wasn't just accepted, he was valued. One of the most impactful moments came during a charity fundraiser organized by the town council. Sarah had attended similar events before, often feeling like an outsider watching others participate. This time, however, something felt different. When the organizers announced a silent auction, featuring donated items from local businesses, Sarah noticed several pieces of Ethan's artwork displayed prominently among the offerings. Someone, likely Margaret or Clara, had submitted them, without telling her. As bids poured in, Sarah stood quietly in the corner, overwhelmed by emotion. By the end of the evening, Ethan's paintings had raised hundreds of dollars for families facing medical hardships, proving that his creativity could inspire generosity in others. The outpouring of support extended beyond social gatherings. Neighbors rallied together to make life easier for Sarah and Ethan in practical ways too. On days when Sarah couldn't leave the house due to Ethan's health, someone always stepped up to run errands for her. One family offered to mow their lawn. Another dropped off homemade meals. During particularly tough weeks when Sarah felt stretched thin between caregiving and work, a group of moms took turns babysitting Ethan so she could catch up on rest. These acts of kindness weren't flashy or dramatic, but they carried immense weight. They reminded Sarah that while Ethan's struggles were unique, they weren't hers to bear alone. Perhaps the most heartwarming example of community solidarity occurred during the winter holidays. That year, money was tighter than usual because of mounting medical bills. Sarah worried about how she'd afford gifts for Ethan, let alone decorations to brighten their home. But then, one chilly December morning, she opened her front door to find a pile of wrapped presents waiting on the porch. Each box bore a tag addressed to Ethan, signed anonymously by Friends Who Care. Inside were toys, art supplies, cozy blankets, and even a handmade scarf knitted in Ethan's favorite shade of blue. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she carried the gifts inside, knowing that their neighbors had come together to ensure Ethan's holiday remained magical. As these connections deepened, Sarah realized that the community's involvement wasn't just about helping her, it was also about learning from Ethan. His presence taught others important lessons about patience, empathy, and the beauty of diversity. Children who once stared at him curiously now greeted him with hugs, eager to play games or sit quietly beside him. Parents approached Sarah to express gratitude for the perspective Ethan brought into their lives, saying he reminded them to appreciate the little things, the sound of laughter, the warmth of sunlight, the joy of simply being alive. Even adults, who initially struggled to understand Ethan's condition, found themselves changed by his unwavering spirit. Through it all, Sarah marveled at how much Ethan had touched the hearts of those around him. He didn't speak many words, but his actions spoke volumes. Whether it was sharing a smile with a stranger at the park or creating art that moved people to tears, Ethan communicated in ways that transcended language. His ability to connect with others despite the barriers imposed by his condition inspired everyone fortunate enough to know him. This newfound sense of belonging gave Sarah strength during the darkest times. There were still nights when worry kept her awake, wondering what the future held for Ethan. Would his body continue to weaken? How long could they keep fighting against the relentless progression of his illness? Yet, amidst these fears, she found solace in knowing they weren't fighting alone. The community had become an extension of their family, standing shoulder to shoulder with them through every triumph and trial. By the time Ethan turned 14, Sarah understood that his impact reached far beyond their immediate circle. His story had woven itself into the fabric of their town, leaving an indelible mark on everyone it touched. Through his courage, creativity, and capacity for love, Ethan had shown the world that true strength lies not in overcoming adversity, but in embracing it with grace and dignity. And Sarah, though weary from years of battling uncertainty, felt grateful for the village that had risen around them, a testament to the power of compassion and the unbreakable bonds forged through shared humanity.